She told me to sit down. I shouldn't have answered the way I did, but that one reckless moment changed everything between us. The door creaked open just as her voice was echoing through the classroom. I was late, again. Not dramatically late, but late enough for every pair of eyes to swivel toward me as if I'd just interrupted a sacred ritual. She stood at the front of the room, framed by the faint glow of the projector. Ms. Laurent. The literature professor. 42, though if you'd told me she'd stepped straight out of a timeless novel, I'd have believed you. Her posture was straight, composed, but there was a natural elegance in the way she held herself, unforced, graceful, like a woman who didn't need to demand attention because it simply came to her. Her eyes met mine over the rims of her reading glasses. Calm, steady. She didn't frown. She didn't scold. She just said, in a low, controlled voice that somehow filled every corner of the room, "Sit down." It was such a simple instruction. But in that moment, with her gaze fixed on me, my brain short-circuited. I wasn't trying to be clever, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. It just slipped out. "Only if you sit on me." I meant it as a mutter to myself, a nervous joke under my breath. Unfortunately, the room had gone so silent that my words floated through the air like a stone tossed into still water. A collective gasp broke the silence. A couple of students laughed, others stared like I'd just thrown my academic career off a cliff. She raised one brow slowly, not in outrage, but with this unreadable blend of surprise and restrained amusement. The corners of her mouth didn't move, but her eyes said everything. Did he really just say that? Heat flooded my face. My heart pounded in my ears, making it hard to think. I wanted to disappear, or rewind time by 10 seconds and keep my mouth shut. But there I was, standing in the doorway, like a fool. She didn't lash out. Instead, she exhaled softly, closed the book she'd been holding, and gestured to an empty seat near the front. "Take your seat," she said. Calm. Controlled. But her gaze lingered for a heartbeat longer than necessary. As I walked to my desk, I caught a hint of her perfume in the air, something subtle and elegant, like warm cedarwood and old paper. I told myself to focus on the lecture. But the truth was, from that moment on, something had shifted. I spent the next week trying not to think about her. It didn't work. Every time I stepped into that classroom, I felt the echo of my own stupid words lingering in the air. A few classmates would glance at me, smirking like they were waiting for another slip-up. She, however, acted as though nothing had happened. Her composure was flawless, focused on the material, precise in her lectures, every word measured. But something about the way she avoided my eyes made me wonder if she actually had noticed me more than she let on. After class on Thursday, as students filed out, I shoved my notebook into my bag and tried to slip away quietly. That's when I heard it. "Eli. Could you stay for a moment?" My name. She remembered my name. She hadn't looked at the roster. She hadn't hesitated. She just said it, softly, clearly, like she'd been waiting for me. I froze in the doorway. A few students looked over their shoulders, curious. My heart thudded. I walked back in slowly, trying to look casual but probably failing miserably. She was at her desk, sliding papers into neat stacks, the lamplight on the corner of the desk casting a warm golden glow across her face. Without the harsh overhead lights, she looked different. Softer. The kind of beautiful you don't notice all at once, it reveals itself in layers the longer you look. "About last week," she said, glancing up briefly through her glasses. "I should probably address that." I opened my mouth, ready to apologize, but she lifted a hand slightly, graceful, calm. "It was inappropriate," she continued. "But, it was also impulsive. I'm not going to make a scene out of it." I nodded quickly. "I'm really sorry. It just came out. I didn't mean." She surprised me by smiling. Not a full smile, just a faint, knowing curve of her lips. "I've been teaching long enough to recognize nervous humor," she said. "What did surprise me was your essay. That caught me off guard." "My essay?" She pulled a sheet from the stack and tapped the margin with her pen. "Your phrasing. It was thoughtful. Emotional, even. Not what I expected after that first impression." Something in her voice softened as she said it. For a moment, the strict teacher vanished, and in her place was a woman genuinely intrigued. As I stood there, the quiet between us stretched, not awkward, but alive. Her eyes met mine fully for the first time since that day, and my chest tightened. I walked out of her office that day with my heart pounding, not from fear this time, but from possibility. The classroom was unusually quiet that afternoon. A soft breeze drifted through the open windows, carrying the faint scent of rain on concrete. Outside, clouds gathered lazily, dimming the daylight until it felt like the room itself had drawn closer, more intimate somehow. We were working in small groups, dissecting a passage from an old romantic poem. My group sat near the front, and to my nervous amusement, Ms. Laurent had decided to circulate between tables, pausing every so often to listen in. She moved gracefully, with the kind of calm that made people straighten up when she approached, not out of fear, but out of respect. When she finally reached our table, my pulse spiked like I'd been caught doing something I shouldn't. "Let's see," she murmured, leaning in to look at my open book. Her hair slipped over her shoulder as she bent slightly, close enough that I caught the soft, warm scent of her perfume again, something woody and elegant, like cedar and worn paper. She glanced at the line I'd underlined, then looked up at me. "Interesting choice," she said. "Why this verse?" Her eyes locked on mine, and for a second I forgot how to speak. It felt honest, I finally managed. Like it wasn't trying to be impressive. Just real. Something flickered in her gaze, approval, maybe, or curiosity. She shifted her weight to point at a phrase, her hand brushing across my page. That's when it happened. Her fingertips grazed against mine. Barely. Just the lightest touch. But it was enough. The contact was brief but electric, a warm spark that shot straight through me. My hand instinctively froze, and for a heartbeat, neither of us moved. She noticed. Of course she did. But instead of jerking away, she simply let the moment linger, a fraction of a second longer than necessary, before continuing to trace the line of the poem with her pen. "See how the rhythm mirrors the feeling," she explained, her voice steady, though I caught the faintest tremor beneath it. I nodded, trying to look composed, but inside everything felt suddenly, sharply alive. That tiny touch had shifted the air between us. When she finally straightened up, she didn't meet my eyes immediately. But as she turned to leave, her gaze flicked back toward me, quick but unmistakable. A silent acknowledgement that we both felt something we weren't supposed to name. For the rest of the class, my mind wasn't on poetry anymore. It was on the warmth that still lingered on my skin, and the way a single accidental touch could make the world tilt, just slightly, in her direction. It started raining just as class ended. Not a gentle drizzle, but a sudden, determined downpour, the kind that made people huddle beneath awnings and check their phones like that would change the weather. I stood at the doorway with a few other students, watching the sheets of rain turn the campus walkway into a shining river. A couple of them made a run for it, squealing as the storm swallowed them. I stayed put, mostly because my notebook bag was thin and my hoodie offered no real defense. Bad timing, huh? I turned. Ms. Laurent stood beside me, arms crossed loosely, watching the rain with a small, almost resigned smile. She wasn't wearing her usual blazer, just a cream-colored blouse that softened her usual sharp edges. Her hair, slightly undone from the humidity, framed her face in gentle waves. Before I could answer, thunder rolled across the sky, low and heavy. She sighed quietly. "Looks like we'll be here a while," she murmured. One by one, everyone else trickled out, choosing to face the rain rather than wait it out. Eventually, it was just the two of us, the classroom door propped open, rain echoing softly through the hallway like a rhythm only we could hear. She walked back inside, pulling a small thermos from her desk. "Tea?" she offered. I blinked, caught off guard by the casualness of it. Yeah. Sure." She poured the tea into two mismatched mugs she kept tucked away, handing me one. The steam curled upward, carrying a faint scent of chamomile and honey. We sat at adjacent desks near the window, watching the storm blur the world outside into a watercolor painting. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was warm. Like the rain had built a little cocoon around us. "I love storms," she said finally, her voice quieter than usual. "They make everything else pause. Like the world has to listen for a change." Her words lingered in the air. She wasn't lecturing now. She was sharing something real. She told me about her habit of reading poetry on rainy nights, about her fear of becoming unseen as the years went by. She said it with a soft laugh, like she was trying to make light of it, but there was a vulnerability beneath that laugh. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. Really listened. And in that quiet, with the rain tapping the windows and the scent of chamomile between us, something shifted again. Not dramatically. Gently. Like two threads accidentally crossing. The library was nearly empty that night. Just the faint hum of the old heating system and the occasional rustle of pages echoing through the rows of bookshelves. Finals week had scattered most students across the city, and the few who remained were buried in their own quiet corners. I hadn't planned on finding her there. Honestly, I'd come to clear my head, maybe finish the paper I'd been putting off. But as I turned the corner toward the poetry section, I froze. She was sitting alone at one of the wooden tables near the back, surrounded by stacks of essays and open books. A soft halo of lamplight fell over her shoulders, tracing the lines of her blouse and casting gentle shadows across her face. She looked tired, beautiful, but tired in a way that made my chest tighten. For a moment, I just watched her, unnoticed. There was something deeply human in seeing her like this, hair slightly messy, glasses perched low, her fingers massaging her temple as she reread a page for the third time. She wasn't the untouchable figure at the front of the classroom anymore. She was, just her. "You look like you're winning the war," I said softly, stepping forward. She startled slightly, then let out a breathy laugh when she saw me. "Eli. I didn't hear you come in." "I was trying to be poetic," I said, gesturing at the mountain of papers. "Guess I ruined it." Her smile lingered this time. "Not the professional kind. The real kind." She gestured for me to sit. I did. The lamplight between us made everything feel smaller, warmer. The rest of the library disappeared. "You should be studying," she teased. "I am," I said. "I'm studying you grading papers." She rolled her eyes, but there was no sharpness in it, only warmth. For a while, we talked about nothing. Books. Music. The way the campus smelled like wet pavement after storms. But then, in the lull between topics, something slipped out before I could stop it. "I think about you, a lot." Her pen froze mid-mark. She didn't look up right away. When she did, her eyes searched mine, steady, unblinking. "Eli," she whispered, a warning and a question all at once. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table, close but not touching hers. "I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know. Because pretending I don't feel it is starting to hurt." For a heartbeat, silence wrapped around us. She didn't pull away. She didn't laugh. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, the wall she kept so carefully built, cracked. Her hand shifted, slowly, almost involuntarily, until her fingers rested lightly on mine. It wasn't a declaration. It was quieter. Truer. And it was enough to make the world stop. Graduation week arrived faster than I expected. Campus was buzzing with the kind of restless energy that only comes when everything familiar is about to end. People posed for photos under trees, signed yearbooks, and made promises they probably wouldn't keep. But underneath all that noise, a quiet heaviness followed me. Because soon, she wouldn't be my teacher anymore. And everything that had stayed unspoken between us was running out of places to hide. I found her alone in the classroom late one afternoon, packing away lecture notes into a box. The walls were half bare now, the shelves emptied. The room felt strangely hollow, like a stage after the curtain falls. She looked up when I stepped inside, surprise flickering across her face. "Eli," she said softly, as though the echo might shatter the fragile calm. "Hi," I managed, closing the door behind me. The sound seemed louder than it should have. For a moment, neither of us moved. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, the late day light warm and golden. It painted everything in soft oranges and pinks, catching in her hair as she brushed a loose strand behind her ear. "I wasn't sure I'd see you again before the ceremony," she said, folding one last stack of papers. "I didn't want to leave without saying goodbye," I replied. My voice came out rougher than I intended. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Goodbye," she repeated, like the word itself carried too much weight. I walked closer, step by step, until I stood just in front of her desk. She looked up at me then, really looked, and for the first time, she didn't hide anything. The careful teacher's mask was gone. What was left was raw, real, and full of everything we hadn't dared to say. "This is the part where I'm supposed to tell you that this can't happen," she whispered. "And is it?" I asked, my heart pounding. Her breath caught. She looked away for a second, then back at me, eyes glistening, conflicted. "Eli, you make it very hard to be sensible." I stepped closer, slowly, carefully. My hand found hers on the desk, not grabbing, just resting over it. Her skin was warm beneath my palm. She didn't pull away. "Then don't be sensible," I said quietly. She let out a shaky laugh, half a sob, half a sigh. Her free hand rose hesitantly, resting against my chest, right over my heartbeat. The touch was light but devastating. For a moment, everything else disappeared. Just the sound of our breaths. The soft rustle of papers in the evening breeze. Her eyes, wide and searching. We stood there suspended, on the edge of something neither of us could name out loud. And in that single, honest look, everything became clear. Spring had returned by the time I saw her again. The campus looked different now, greener, quieter, as if the rush of graduation had given way to a long exhale. I'd been invited back to speak to a new literature class, a strange feeling for someone who'd only just been a student. Part of me wondered if she'd even show up. Another part never doubted she would. I spotted her near the courtyard fountain, standing beneath the soft pink blossoms of the cherry trees. She looked lighter somehow. No heavy stack of papers in her arms, no tired lines around her eyes. Just a woman enjoying the warm breeze, a faint smile tugging at her lips as petals swirled around her feet. For a moment, I stayed where I was, watching her. It felt like I was seeing her for the first time all over again, not the teacher, not the figure at the front of the room, but her. When she turned and saw me, surprise flashed across her face, followed quickly by something softer. Her smile widened. "Eli," she said, like the name belonged to a memory she cherished. "Hi," I answered, unable to keep the grin off my face. "I didn't think you'd be here." "I heard you were speaking today," she said, brushing a stray blossom from her shoulder. I was curious. We started walking slowly through the courtyard, the path dappled with sunlight and petals. Our steps fell into an easy rhythm. She told me she'd taken a short sabbatical, time to breathe, travel a little, read for herself instead of for work. I told her about my new job at a small publishing house, the chaos, the excitement, the way sometimes I still caught myself looking for her face in a classroom. There was no tension now. No walls. Just two people who'd carried something unspoken for so long finally letting it settle between them, quiet and real. As we reached the edge of the courtyard, a breeze lifted through the trees, scattering petals around us like soft, pink snow. She laughed, a sound so genuine and bright it made my chest ache in the best way. Without thinking too hard, I reached for her hand. Her fingers met mine halfway. There was no hesitation this time, no brief withdrawal. Just a simple, natural intertwining, as if this was where our hands had always meant to rest. She looked up at me, her eyes warm, steady. "This feels different," she said softly. "It is," I replied. "Because now, it's real." We kept walking, hand in hand beneath the cherry blossoms, the sun dipping low behind us. It wasn't a dramatic ending. It was quiet. Honest. And for us, that was perfect. Not the end. Just the beginning. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a good slow burn romance. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. And tell me in the comments, what part made you feel the spark the most?